Alright, in their quiet fields, I decided to do a review for this. It's kind of weird because how much of a review do you really need for games in a series? There's a little bit you can state, and in a sense I almost feel like I should just do my old rap and review style for it, but the last video is big enough, and all these videos are big enough, really. So, I'm a fan of the CWB series. A fairly big one, I'd say. I mean, I think I've bought everything, actually, by now. I haven't played a lot of the older ones. But I started out with Thunder at the Crossroads, probably about when it came out. I think it's the first edition of it. And it impressed me so much. The orders system and how well it worked, the way defensive orders worked in with it, the fact that troops you couldn't push them beyond their limits the way that you can in most Civil War games. The rest of the system is solid. There's nothing really magically special to talk about it. It's a little bit more streamlined, I think, than the Great Battles of the American Civil War games. Of course, it's also on a bigger level. It's on this brigade level, which limits the choices of battles. They can only really do some of the bigger battles. You can't see the little skirmishes, the Pea Ridges, which isn't really a skirmish. Pea Ridge is a big battle, but certainly Wilson's Creek is more of a skirmish or a smaller battle. You see, for South Mountain, they had to bubble it down to the RSS to play it. And that's kind of the level I like to see. I like to play the big battles out at a scale that I can fit on my table and, play in a few days, rather than doing something like Terrible Swift Sword. And I assume this Hallowed Ground is just as ugly. Thunder at the Crossroads, for example, is a long game on its own. The turn structure, the time schedule, isn't that much different between the two. Twice as many turns in the RSS. But by stepping away a little bit, you get to see the big movements in these larger battles a little easier. It also allows you to do things like 7 days, where you have, a tactical representation of what really is an operational or grand tactical type situation to be covered, where there's several battles, where there's, it's not this single day's fighting around key terrain features or a couple of days. Anyway, not sure where I'm going with all that, except to say that, look, this system really impressed the hell out of me when I first saw it. It impressed me enough that it became a must-buy. That it became such a must-buy that even playing things like this Antietam in their quiet fields and the Shiloh, April's Harvest, which I think were my second and third that I got, they didn't impress me anywhere near the way Thunder did. And some of that is maybe the mystique of Gettysburg to begin with. Gettysburg is, I don't know, it impresses me in a lot of ways. It also has this nice open terrain everywhere. There's not a lot of forests to slog through and such. But there weren't in this either. This wasn't too bad a terrain. What really disturbed me, I think, about this, about the Shiloh game, and then when I saw the Three Battles of Manassas, it finally dawned on me what it really is. It's this attempt to do the the pre-core structure type system, So instead of defining wings and trying to use them as megacore of some sort or another. Hey, I have megacore, I'm facing it. Like a Stygian game, I think. Anyway, instead of that kind of view, which probably wouldn't work, what they did was every division is under individual orders. Now, to some extent, that's just a pain in the ass. To some extent, it doesn't work with the rules. They fixed that over in South Mountain. I don't know if it's an RSS in general rule that fixes it or if it's South Mountain specific, but they give you little divisional command headquarters and say, look, you know, these are generic, but if you need to bolt your division down somewhere, you use this and you don't use up your leader, who's kind of needed in the front lines. For an attacker, it works fine to have this, to have the individual divisional command or whatever. But for the defender, it doesn't quite work. His leader can't move around and try to rally routed units. The leader can't be in the front line commanding the moving around to where he's needed to improve the morale of units. Just a bunch of stuff, and by that I don't mean rally, I mean improve their chance of a morale check. You can't really use him on a close combat because he's supposedly bolted down. Well, once you do that, you've stripped the leader of his ability to perform his functions. And that just, that really doesn't work. There are some other big minuses in this for me. One is it starts out as this incredibly chaotic situation. One of the things that I always felt was kind of glossed over in the rules was the detached artillery. My feeling always was, the way the rules are written, hey, you can detach everything, and then you no longer have to keep your artillery attached to the units it's supposed to be, and it all becomes free and can run around and do whatever it wants. But there are some restrictions on the non-detached artillery. And in this game, the artillery starts out all at the wrong strength, not what's printed on the counter. The counter indicates the actual artillery strength of the corps or whatever, represented in the normal sized units that it would be deployed in, the maximum firepower. And it's got that number on it. Whereas the Confederates start out with their artillery spread out among all these detachments as well as portions of that original force. And it's kind of a chaotic situation there. The battle itself is chaotic. It doesn't play out with the sort of grandeur that Thunder does, or the 7 Days. There's not a lot of room for maneuvering here. Then we got the McClellan rule, which, it's a cute rule. It helps make the game follow McClellan in terms of restricting how much you're willing to commit at any time. And if you're really familiar with the game, you're probably going to be more comfortable in, yeah, I don't want to commit the 5th Corps. They're too expensive to do, so I'm going to try to fight this without them. That all kind of works well, except that if you kind of go off the rails and stop being McClellan, that may be a game decision. So then, you know, you may make a victory decision that says, well, bothering McClellan a lot is worth activating this unit. And that just feels a little funny. I'm not sure how to replace that. You certainly don't want the Union to be able to bring its full force to bear. Even with that 0 commander, McClellan could issue a lot more orders, could get a lot of things in play. It's very possible to get units moving in good coordinated attacks, even with shitty leaders, as I proved in Austerlitz. Well, at least if you have the nighttime to do the planning. It would be tougher here. A 0 leader is pretty damn bad to be saddled with. But there's something that feels wrong about the McClellan roll. Not that you're restricted, but that you're making this trade-off of victory points versus doing the right thing, winning the battle. I don't like being in that position, but I don't know what else to say about it. This is also, and Thunder incidentally was too, from an era when the gamers made these terribly garish maps. There's a number of things to go against it. One, it doesn't lie flat. Some of that seems to be, some of the back folding didn't take right, but some of it seems to also just be the nature of the map, the sturdiness of it. But then it's also hideous. I mean, I look at this and I say, I mean, it really looks, I don't know. What's funny is I looked back at some of their older maps, and those were kind of nice. And then their modern ones are kind of nice. So there's this one era when they came out with some really, really ugly maps. The others aren't, you know, they're not Simonson, but they're nice, you know, they're functional. They're not, they don't look like a Technicolor yawn. Another thing I've always been kind of negative about, but there's not much you can do these days, or for the past few decades, is gloss on gloss. Glossy maps, glossy counters cause things to slip more. And I found the gamers counters slip particularly extensively. So they're hard to maintain, to stay on the board. So a lot of things that I say make it sound like I don't really like this game. And you know, within the series, I always complain, right? Within the series, this is one of my less favorite. I like some of the smaller battles better, and I certainly like Thunder the best, because they don't have some of these issues. Some of the smaller battles come in later periods of the war where the core structure is defined and you don't have those problems. This game also is one of a couple that says, don't use defensive orders. They're forbidden. Well, I really like defensive orders. And when you look at this, and when you look at almost any of these games, if you don't have defensive orders, the casualty counts go way up. They go on unbelievably higher than they probably should. I feel like both this and the Great Battles of American Civil War do a good job of modeling what losses are when units are actually fighting, but what they fail to do is to take into account the fact that the historical armies didn't fight all along the front with every unit. Now, this game sort of takes that into account. The series takes it into account with the order's acceptance, so the attacker is going to be less able to drive the action. You're going to be less able to just, you know, oh, hey, there's an opportunity, let's run off and take that. But when you take away the defensive orders, which are an optional role, the defender is able to stand there and take whatever you throw at him. He will not withdraw unless you step on his core headquarters, and there aren't any here. There's no clear way to force those Confederate divisions to get out of there at all. You can't even applying pressure. They will fight for every inch of the ground, on and on and on. And you saw, I mean, my units were just dissolved, but I just kept bringing them back with straggler recovery and throwing them back in, and they'd slow the Union down enough that he wasn't able to get that final hex in Sharpsburg. And that's pretty, that was a key event in the game that I played. So within the series, I don't particularly care for this one. It's also not a battle, you know, that I really, really loved the way I loved Gettysburg. Gettysburg, I don't know, just really excited me so much in so many ways. And this one, because it is kind of chaotic, didn't didn't really stick in my head the same way. In some ways, maybe they try to do too many neat little things in some of these. This one and the Shiloh one have lots and lots of, well, not lots and lots, but they have these special rules that kind of, they're not really necessarily to my taste. Speaking of which, I always forget to pull it out. I have printouts. Richard Berg made random events tables for these games, which is kind of an interesting idea. I think we saw a random events table over in South Mountain, so apparently someone liked that idea. But the Berg event tables I have printed out, and I almost never use them. I don't know. Random events, they're cool in strategic games, but they interest me a lot less in tactical games. I feel like the base core system should be sufficient to show most of the situations. A few special cases might be in order, like here, McClellan. You could do that with a random events table. McClellan gets to issue an order. Maybe a 1 in 36 chance or something. It would be kind of cool if there was, instead of the McClellan track that penalized you with victory points, maybe some kind of, you want to do something with McClellan, you have to roll. You just you have to almost, or maybe a limitation on what he can do in terms of which units he can commit, and then you have to make a roll to do so. Now, some players will certainly like the track better than a random chart to do that, because they're in control then. They get to make this decision. Do I want to spend the victory points at the McClellan table to get more activity and maybe win this battle? For me, though, I just don't feel like I should have the right to make that decision, because in a sense, McClellan doesn't have the right to make that decision. He is so worried about the strategic situation that he's just not willing to commit those forces. And unfortunately for me, I'm unable to take on the role of someone making that big an error when faced with this tactical situation that I can see exactly what I want to do. So anyway, kind of a mixed feelings about this one. It's still a good game. Anything in this series I think is a lot of fun and is very good. This one, though, I feel that you have to do some work to get the proto-core structure to kind of work. You have to fudge the rules for it. And you have to do that with anyone that I have. What do we say? I don't know if Perryville has it. I haven't played it yet. Champion Hill has good standard rules. No Better Place to Die is pretty standard. So, you know, as you get past this 1862 and you start getting into where the core operate like the system was designed for them to operate, it works a lot smoother. You don't have to try to guess how to make up rules to make it work or whatever. And I don't know. I'm kind of looking forward to looking at brand new ones. Perryville is the next battle in the series, but I'm not going to jump right into that. I've got some other, at least one other thing to do first. So anyway, that's this one. We'll be doing them all. I don't know if I'll do a review on them all. Some of them may seem somewhat less colorful than this. Oh God, that map. Oh, it hurts. I don't know why Thunder's map doesn't hurt as much. It's almost as bold a color. The Shiloh one is even worse, I think. It's just... I don't know. No restraint. Alright, let's send it up.